Howdy, listeners. Welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I am your host, Casey Fatchett. If you haven't listened to the podcast before, in addition to bringing you informative and entertaining photography and business-related content, I also go on adventures with the crew of the Starship Fibonacci. Right now, we're hot on the trail of smuggler, mechanic, and all-around rogue Hamdo Bane when we found ourselves running low on fuel. Right now, we're stuck on a remote planet, and Golden Hour is playing a game that I can only describe as somewhat similar to poker with some of the locals in an attempt to win the fuel that we need.
Snug, 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 snug.
Be careful, Golden. These guys look like they're some pretty rough customers.
Snug.
Okay, I'll keep my mouth shut and introduce the episode. In this episode, I am speaking with my wife, Caroline, about securing media coverage for your business. Have you ever wanted to be quoted as an expert in an article? Here's how you go about doing that. More on that after this short break. Hey, Golden, are you supposed to have 8 cards when everybody else only has 7?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how we handle the situation.
Did you have a contract?
Well, I had one I found for free online, but my lawyer says it might not hold up.
Next time, you should head over to nerdyphotographer.com. They've got a selection of contract templates for weddings, events, portrait sessions, and even for hiring second photographers and associate photographers, which would certainly have helped you in your current situation.
Really? I will check that out. nerdyphotographer.com?
Yep, nerdyphotographer.com. They've got all sorts of contracts and agreements that can help make sure to protect you and your clients. So what are you going to do?
Well, we just have to wait and see what happens, I guess.
So, no pants on?
Who know anything below the waist? Totally Porky Pig in it.
Impressive.
Not really. Yeah, it was pretty cold out.
Ew.
Yep.
Hey there, do you like movies, cartoons, video games, anime, and everything in between? Then we have a show for you. The For Nerds by Nerds podcast. Every week, Josh and Ben bring you all the latest and greatest in movie reviews, news, commentaries, interviews, special guests, and tons of bonus episodes. New episodes come out every Monday. We also make great nerdy content on our YouTube channel. You can find our show anywhere podcasts are found. The For Nerds by Nerds podcast. Your one stop for all your nerdy needs. Stay nerdy, my friends.
Hello, and welcome to the Nerdy Photographer Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Fatchett, and I have here today my wife, Caroline Fatchett, to talk about securing media coverage for your business. Caroline has over 15 years of experience in media and public relations, securing coverage in top-tier publications such as the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, Reuters, Bloomberg, as well as numerous trade publications. I have wanted to have her on my show since I started it, and I am very excited to have her share her expertise with you. Welcome, Caroline.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
So, what types of media coverage are there?
So there's 2 broad buckets of media coverage. There's paid media coverage, which has a very special place in my heart, but will not be the center of our focus today. Paid media is exactly what it sounds like. It's media that you pay for, and it can take the form of an advertorial article, a Q&A, featured blog posts, sponsored social posts, and other types of content. With paid media, you get exactly what you pay for and have complete control over the content.
What should you consider when paying for media coverage?
So there's a few key things to consider when thinking about potentially engaging in paid media. One is the audience reach. You really have to consider your channel and how many people you're actually going to be reaching for that, and gauge whether or not it's worth the monetary investment. That brings us to the second point, which is the overall cost. Their paid media prices have increasingly risen. And depending on the channel, you could be talking about several thousands of dollars. So you really need to make sure that the investment makes sense for you, against judging it against how many people you're actually going to reach, and how frequently you're actually going to reach those people. Depending on the type of paid media, it may be something that only appears once, but in a big splashy way, or it's something that appears multiple times and maybe has the chance to get in front of a few more eyeballs. All of that is also influenced by sort of the format and the tone of the content that you're using for paid media. You want to be careful, that you're really thinking about the end user, your sort of audience, and who your target customer is. You want to keep that in mind from the very beginning. You should always be thinking about how it's going to be received by those people, when determining, what the best channel is for your content, what the best tone is for the actual content itself, the way it's worded, the way it's structured, the layout, all of that plays into how your audience ultimately receives it. So that's one side of it. The other big bucket that we're going to focus on more today is called earned media. And it's called earned media because you work for it. This is coverage that's written by a journalist or a blogger. It features you on an editorial basis, meaning that you didn't pay for this.
But is earned media worth the return on the time that you invest, though, to get that coverage?
Yeah, I mean, there are some core benefits over paid media in some ways. One is credibility. People can spot paid for media pretty quickly, even if it takes the form of sort of like a ghost written article. And being quoted or featured by the New York Times is sort of instant credibility by one of the most trusted sources out there, and in particular for weddings. And their style guide is sort of wedding Bible. So the other factor is that it's free. It doesn't cost anything more than your time and energy, and you can put that money into then using sponsored media to sort of publicize your earned media. Like, it can be a cycle that sort of feeds on itself. And honestly, it's worth more than just money. It has a longer shelf life than most paid media, and there used to be this adage that if you were getting quoted in an article, it was worth the same amount of money that it would cost for you to take out a full page ad on that very same page. And obviously that's, a little bit outdated with the advent of social media. But, social media it's harder to balance, because social media, it's not just about the clicks that you're getting or the impressions that you're getting. A lot of people try to correlate the value of earned media versus just impressions, and that's really not an adequate way to judge it. People are much more likely to remember an article by a trusted source than they are in scanning over some sort of social media post. So, for example, one of the sort of major success stories that we've seen, I think, in recent years, has been the Dexter Lake Club. And when they were featured in that New York Times article, that sort of gave them, if for those of you who don't know, they are a wedding band and have become very popular and hugely successful. And that New York Times article sort of skyrocketed their success.
Yeah.
So that's, it's an example of a way that earned media can really amp up your publicity.
Yeah, I mean, they were featured in a full page, front page article in the style section of the New York Times wedding, and just by some guy who had come to a wedding that they were at. That happened to be like pure luck, but this is what getting stuff placed, like going through the work to get that earned media coverage can have the exact same effect. But I mean, what are their drawbacks to like this type of earned media?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are drawbacks to earned media. One is, you never really have full control over the content. I'm sure that the Dexter Lake Club band was thrilled to be featured, but the reality is they didn't really know how that was going to shake out in terms of the resulting article until it was published. So, there are editorial rules at most publications, blogs, whatever outfit you're looking at, that they're not going to show you the entire piece before it's published, be it a blog post or an article. The higher tier publications in particular probably won't show you any part of that article, including whatever they're planning on quoting you on. So you really have to go into it sort of knowing that you're going to be giving up some control, but because of that, the balance is the major credibility that you get from it.
Yeah, you're sort of left in the dark, waiting to see what's going to happen when that article comes out, how they actually treat it. But you hope for the best. So here's the big, part of this. How do you go about earning that media coverage?
Yeah. So, I mean, I meant it when I said that, it's called earned media because you work for it. This is a process. But the best way to earn media is to be useful to a reporter or a journalist or a blogger. These people are always in need of content, and the trick is finding an idea or content that speaks to them and fits what they write about and what they cover. So the first place to start here is to understand that research is your friend. And, this sounds sort of maybe like a lot of work at its outset, but it's actually just building upon something you're probably already doing. And that is to identify your audience. Who are your customers and what are they reading? What are they looking at? So with that in mind, once you've determined where your audience is, you've got to start following the same reporters, the same bloggers, the same websites, publications that they are following. Start reading. Make it a daily habit. Spend 15 minutes a day just catching up on the types of content that your audience is likely looking at, that your would-be customer is likely also looking at, and you will start to notice trends in terms of which bloggers or reporters cover what specific types of things.
I think that it'd be a good idea for people in that sense to maybe even set up a Google notification to look for terms that are related to what you want to get out there, what you want to be known for, so that you're getting those articles, delivered to you, so that on a regular basis, like what's attracting, because in the end you want the attention of people who are going to be searching maybe for it, or just where they're naturally reading. So having those things like come up that you can, instead of searching for them every day, getting a notification as to when they come up would be a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. That's an excellent way. And frankly, Google Alerts is one of my very best friends. It's an excellent way to automate some of this work so that you don't feel like you're having to go through and do the searching on your own. And it may also lead you to new publications, new voices, new bloggers, new websites that you may not have known about, but that are actually covering the topics that you want to be out there talking about. And that sort of brings up another element to this. In addition to thinking through where your audience is and what they're reading, you also have to think about how your business sort of fits within that and what you would potentially want to be saying around that, right? Like think about how your voice would fit into what they write. And once you have started to think about all of these things, you're going to want to start building actual relationships with journalists and bloggers. And this is, I think people think that this is a big, huge, scary thing, or that there's some like mythical, element to this, some sort of magic element to this. It could not be more simple than to start building relationships with reporters. Once you've identified and started following reporters, and you really need to be following them, you need to be reading their content consistently. I would start with one or two of them. And this part's really easy. Reporters love feedback on their coverage, particularly if it's flattering feedback. If you saw and read a piece that you really loved, let that reporter or blogger know and tell them specifically what you liked about it, what spoke to you, what you thought was really interesting. Don't try to bullshit, because reporters are literally paid to smell it. Like they are paid to suss it out. That's their job, So reaching out to a reporter can be as simple as saying with a short note, hey, I really love this article. I've seen this happening. Like I've seen this happening at weddings too. I think it's really interesting. I'm a photographer for weddings, and, if you're ever in need of examples, or if you're ever looking for really cool weddings, I've got a few that I've done recently that are really interesting. I'd love to talk to you about it. Sort of leave it at that. Let them know you're happy to talk, and understand that this part of it does take some time. Don't expect to hear back from a reporter immediately. It may take several attempts at outreach to get them to respond, but start small. Pick a reporter or blogger at a smaller outlet first. They're more likely to be more responsive. They're probably not getting as much feedback. So they're more likely to engage. And, PR is one thing where the growth actually works in both ways. You can start at a little tiny, river that feeds into a bigger river, and that feeds into an ocean, right? Like it does actually trickle up much in the way that it trickles down. So if you score that one big hit, it also trickles out to all of the smaller publications. It goes both ways. So really you can choose whichever you prefer. It kind of depends on exactly the element of your business that you want to be talking about, like how you want to be, what you want to be known for, and how you want to communicate to people in terms of the topic. And that sort of brings us to the next part, where you're going to start thinking about how to develop an actual story idea pitch, or a pitch to a reporter. So for this, when I said before, you're going to think about topics a specific reporter or a blogger covers and how it goes with your business. You want to think about the ways that those things overlap. Does this wedding blogger write about a specific type of wedding? Do you work on those types of weddings, or something very similar? Trends are your friend. Think about their coverage and maybe what's missing. Are they not seeing a whole segment of weddings? Like, are they missing this whole element of the wedding industry that you think has been really interesting, or it's been changing this past year? That's something they're going to want to hear about. If you've seen multiple examples of something completely opposite to what they're writing about, that's also something interesting. For a lot of the wedding reporters, the reporters in the wedding industry, rather, if there's a wedding that's like got some super crazy outlandish element to it, or had some really incredibly emotional components, those can be hooks for a reporter. You'd be surprised at how much, at how varied the things are that can get content. And all of these are story ideas. Reporters love them because that's how they get content. If you look at any major news publication, like, okay, if you were to open the New York Times today, and you looked at everything beyond the first page, right? Because the first page is generally breaking news and sort of like major news issues. I guarantee you that at least 90% of the other content in the paper was pitched by someone, because that's the way this works. And if you showed me any one of those articles, I could probably tell you who pitched it, because you do this long enough, you start to figure out, okay, whose picture is accompanying the article, who's quoted. Chances are the people who were quoted, one of the people who were quoted, were the ones to pitch the story, because that's sort of how it works. You pitch a story, you get quoted. So, everybody's generating this content, and reporters love it. And once you've established those sort of nice, light, airy relationships with reporters, where you've been giving them positive feedback or constructive feedback in their stories, now's the time to maybe pitch them an actual story idea. And again, super, super easy, but you want to make this personalized. You're not going out to like a big group of reporters at the same time with a story idea. This is a one-on-one relationship. So you can reach out to a reporter and let them know you have an idea for a story and that you'd love to talk with them if they have a minute. I can't be too careful about this. When you're emailing a reporter, you do not want to give them the entire story idea in your email. I have seen reporters just sort of run off with those story ideas and never respond. And yes, it's shitty behavior, but it does happen. So to guard yourself against that, I would recommend, giving them something of a little bit of a teaser, a brief description of some element of what you're talking about, but don't give them too much. They, I mean, at the end of the day, they don't need to buy the cow if you're literally emailing them the milk.
Yeah, yeah. You've often told me not to tell the whole story in an article, and it's happened to me where I like afterwards where I like had mentioned parts of an article, and then the reporter like went off and wrote it and did not contact me to like quote me in the article. They went to their own editorial contacts and used them for the article. But yes, don't give away the whole story. Just give it's a teaser. It's like a little teaser trailer for a movie. You guys got to give them enough to like, get them to come in there and buy the popcorn and come into the movie theater to see the whole story. So how long after I've pitched a reporter should I wait to hear back from them? Or before I go to another reporter, if I don't hear back and I want to go to somebody else.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think if you send a note to a reporter and you don't hear back within, say, 24 hours, you can send them a follow-up note saying, hey, I understand if you're swamped or you're not interested. I'm going to move on to another reporter tomorrow if I don't hear back from you. So then you're giving them another 24 hours to respond to you. And if you don't hear back at that point, you have in good faith given them a heads up that you're planning to move on, and you can feel free to move on. And look, it may not yield a story the first time. The reporter may come back to you and say, hey, I don't think this is a fit, or like, I'm really swamped right now. I don't have time to cover this, but thanks for reaching out. Even if it doesn't yield a story the very first time, you are actually establishing a relationship with that journalist or that blogger, and you are showing yourself that you are at the very least trying to be helpful in a way that isn't just all about seeking coverage for yourself. And by doing that, by putting that journalist or blogger first in terms of their needs and showing that that's what your focus is, they are much more likely to come back to you when they do have a story that they need a photographer to comment on, or if they just want to know what's going on in trends. They're more likely to circle back to you if you've shown that your focus is being helpful to them.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that this is much like networking, and it's a symbiotic relationship. Like you feed them, like give them content to talk about, give them a story to write about, and show yourself as a resource for them. And they're going to be coming to you when you haven't thought of something. They come back and that's how you end up being quoted as the expert in an article. And I'm sure that like many people sit out there going like, how did this person get quoted? Why is this person in there? I want to be that person. Like, this is how you do it. You spend the time getting to know the reporters, and then the thing is, it yields results. Like other reporters see you quoted in those articles, and they start going like, oh, maybe I need to reach out to that person, and then like to get your take on something that I'm writing about, because it leads to more and more coverage later on down the road.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying, I have literally witnessed in the past week, where I had an individual who, we had been working to try and get them placed, to get them coverage or get them quoted, by certain media. And they did end up getting quoted, and in this case, it was a Financial Times article. And within 2 hours, we had 7 requests from publication, like from the New York Times, from Reuters, from Bloomberg, from the Washington Post, and then a couple of like smaller trade publications who were all asking to talk to the same person just because they had seen that person quoted in the one story, and it was one quote, but it was a good quote. And that's a whole other engage, once you get the reporter to bite on your story, that's a whole other facet of how, that's how to work with reporters. That's actual media training. And I think we can go into that in a separate session, but
yeah, I think that's a whole other, that's a whole.
Well, you better start listening, better start listening, better start listening, better start listening, better start listening.
Hey, and now for my favorite part of the show. What's that say? Useless information. This is always death.
So this is how I end every one of my podcast episodes, is with a little useless information. which is, fitting that Caroline's on for this because she's the one who referred to my encyclopedic knowledge of trivial things as useless information. And I've been saving this one specifically for 2 years now for when Caroline came on. Caroline, did you know that the role of John McClane in the movie Die Hard was initially offered to Frank Sinatra?
What? That is not true.
It is absolutely true. Even though he was in his 70s, Frank Sinatra was originally offered the role of John McClane in the movie Die Hard because the movie is based on the 1979 Roderick Thorpe novel Nothing Lasts Forever, which was a follow-up to the 1966 novel The Detective. And in 1968, that novel was turned into a film, which starred Frank Sinatra. Not as John McClane. The name was changed to a different name, but he was a former New York cop who became a private investigator. And when Sinatra signed on to that film, it was in his contract that the studio had to offer him the main part in the sequel. And since the book that Die Hard is based on was the sequel, they had to offer it to Old Blue Eyes first. But he refused.
That is amazing.
But he refused the role.
Well, good for him. That was a smart move.
I know, it's one of your.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that completely useless information with me.
You're very welcome.
Well, you better start listening. 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 Better start listening.
Hey, Doc. Thanks for seeing me.
No problem. I'm glad we got that whole other thing cleared up.
Yeah, I have to say, you scared me pretty bad when you told me I only had 6 months to live.
And you would have. In the Wild Wild West. But luckily, we have creams for that these days.
I appreciate it.
But I didn't ask you to come in to discuss life-saving salves and ointments.
What is it, Doc?
It's your WordPress website. It's old and outdated, and it needs a fresh new look.
I know, Doc. But I just don't have the money to pay a designer for a custom website.
You don't need to pay for a custom design when you use Flow Themes.
Flow themes?
Yes, Flow Themes. They have a wide variety of WordPress themes for the modern creative. Not just photographers, but for videographers, florists, wedding planners, and much more.
But are they customizable to suit my needs?
Yes, every theme is totally customizable. Flow Themes has even launched a new line of Flex Themes, which allows you to customize your website further than ever before while maintaining a cohesive, professional-looking theme.
Where can I get one, Doc?
Go to nerdyphotographer.com/recommends/flow themes to learn more and see what they have to offer.
Thanks, Doc. I really appreciate it.
Good. But now we're going to need to talk about what's wrong with your uvula.
My uvula? What is it?
It's a small teardrop-shaped piece of soft tissue that hangs down in the back of your throat, but that's not important right now.
Well, you better start listening. 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 Better start listening.
Welcome back. I would like to thank my wife, Caroline Fatchett, for being on the podcast to discuss securing media coverage for your business. Caroline will be back to teach all of you what to do when you do get that media coverage on a future episode. You can find Caroline at CM Fatchett on Twitter and Clubhouse. Go over and find her. As always, if you have not already, please subscribe to the Nerdy Photographer podcast and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on Facebook at Nerdy Photographer and on Instagram and Twitter at The Nerdy Photo. And you can also find me on the Clubhouse app at KCF Photo. Okay, Golden is about to lay down his cards, and we're going to see if we get that fuel we need.
Snug, 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 snug.
I'm pretty sure you had the best hand. Why did you blast all of them?
Snug.
They were going to double cross us and try to steal the ship? Okay, then. Well done. Until next time, everybody, stay safe and stay nerdy.
better, get better, get better. Listen.